A maid's daughter risked her entire future to help an injured boy bleeding out at school, never suspecting that the charity case she saved was actually the secret son of a billionaire. The silence in the locker room was heavier than the metallic smell of blood. On the white tiles, a boy lay dying, ignored by the wealthy students who simply stepped over him as if he were trash. For Emily, the janitor's daughter, crossing that threshold wasn't just a violation of school policy. It was a death sentence for her family's survival. She knew that saving him meant losing her scholarship, her mother's job, and their only home. But as she knelt in the grime to stop the bleeding, she didn't realize she was holding the secret heir to a billion-dollar empire, or that her act of mercy was about to cost her everything. Emily knelt in the grime, risking her scholarship to save a stranger everyone else treated like trash. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late November, and the air inside the prestigious Oak Creek Academy smelled of floor wax and damp wool. The heavy rain battered against the high windows of the gymnasium, drowning out the distant sound of luxury cars idling in the pickup lane. Emily Carter, a 17-year-old with pale blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, was not rushing to a chauffeured sedan. She was waiting for her mother, Linda, who was finishing her shift mopping the administrative wing. Emily sat on a bench near the boys' locker room, reviewing her history notes. She was invisible here. As the daughter of the school's head custodian, she attended Oak Creek on a precarious staff family scholarship. One wrong move, one failing grade, one complaint from a wealthy parent, and she would be back at the public high school in the city. Grandpa Frank always said, "Keep your head down and your eyes open," she whispered to herself, tracing the spine of her worn textbook. Her grandfather, a decorated combat medic from the Korean War, had raised her on stories of duty and precision. He had passed away 2 years ago, but his voice was still the loudest one in her head. A sudden crash from inside the boys' locker room shattered her concentration. It was the sound of metal hitting tile, followed by a sickening thud. Then, silence. Emily looked around. The hallway was empty, save for a few students at the far end laughing at a video on a phone. They hadn't heard, or they didn't care. She hesitated. The boys' locker room was strictly off limits. Entering it was grounds for immediate suspension. "Keep your head down," Grandpa Frank would have warned. But then she heard a low groan. It wasn't a cry for attention. It was the sound of someone in genuine, suppressed agony. Emily shoved her book into her backpack and stood up. She pushed the heavy double doors open and slipped inside. The locker room was humid and smelled of sweat and expensive cologne. In the back corner, near the showers, a boy was curled on the floor. He was surrounded by overturned benches and scattered equipment. He wore the school uniform, navy blazer, khaki trousers, but it was torn at the shoulder and smeared with dirt. Emily rushed over, her sneakers squeaking on the wet tile. "Hey, can you hear me?" The boy didn't answer. He was clutching his ribs, his breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Blood matted his dark hair and dripped steadily onto the white tiles, pooling near his ear. He looked about her age, maybe a little older, with a sharp jawline and a build that suggested he was an athlete, though right now he looked broken. She recognized him vaguely. He was the new kid who had transferred a month ago. He kept to himself, ate lunch alone behind the bleachers, and wore a uniform that always looked slightly too big, as if it were a hand-me-down. The rumor mill said he was a charity case, a foster kid the school took in for tax breaks. That made him a target. "I'm going to check your head," Emily said, her voice steady. She didn't sound like a terrified teenager. She sounded like the granddaughter of a combat medic. She gently moved his hand. A nasty gash ran along his hairline, deep and angry. His skin was pale, clammy. "You're going into shock," she assessed. She shrugged off her own thick cardigan and bundled it into a pillow, sliding it carefully under his head. "I need to stop this bleeding." She looked around. Nothing but dirty towels. She couldn't use those. The infection risk was too high. Without hesitating, she reached into her backpack and pulled out her own clean gym shirt, pressing it firmly against the wound on his head. The boy winced, his eyes fluttering open. They were a startling shade of gray, clouded with pain. He tried to pull away, his instinct purely defensive. "Stay still," Emily commanded, her tone firm but kind. "I've got you. You took a bad hit." They left," he rasped, his voice cracking. "Don't talk. Save your breath." Footsteps echoed near the entrance. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. If she was caught here with a boy, especially in this position, the narrative would be spun against her instantly. "Well, look what we have here," a sneering voice echoed off the lockers. Emily didn't look up. She knew the voice. Brad Henderson, the captain of the football team and the son of the vice principal. "The janitor's girl and the stray dog," Brad laughed, walking closer. Two of his teammates flanked him, smirking. "We were just teaching the new guy a lesson about hierarchy. Didn't think he'd need a nurse." "He's bleeding, Brad," Emily said, applying more pressure to the wound. "He needs a doctor. Call the nurse." "The nurse went home at 4, Brad said, checking his expensive watch. "And my dad doesn't like 911 calls coming to the school. Bad for the image. Just leave him. He'll wake up and walk it off. It's just a scratch." "He has a concussion and possibly broken ribs," Emily snapped, her anger flaring hotter than her fear. "If he isn't treated, he could have internal bleeding. Help me lift him." Brad scoffed, kicking the boy's sneaker with the toe of his boot. "I'm not touching him, and neither should you. You know the rules, Emily. No girls in here. If my dad walks in, you're the one who gets suspended, not me." The boy on the floor groaned again, his hand gripping Emily's wrist with surprising strength. He was terrified. "I don't care about the rules," Emily said, looking Brad directly in the eyes. "I care about him not dying on the floor." Brad's smirk vanished. He stepped closer, looming over her. "You're really pushing your luck, Carter. You think because your mom scrubs the toilets you get special treatment? Leave him. Now." Emily remembered the stories her grandfather told her about the war. You don't leave a man behind. Not ever. It doesn't matter if he's a general or a private. You do the job. "No," Emily said. Brad stared at her, stunned by the defiance from the girl who usually turned invisible when he walked by. He let out a harsh laugh. "Fine. Have it your way. But don't say I didn't warn you." He turned to his friends. "Let's go. The smell in here is getting worse." They sauntered out, leaving the heavy doors swinging behind them. Emily didn't waste a second. She turned back to the boy. "What's your name?" "Michael," he whispered. "Okay, Michael. I'm Emily. I'm going to fix you up enough to get you to my mom's car. We're taking you to the hospital. I don't care what Brad says." She opened her backpack again. She carried a small, dense first aid kit, a habit Grandpa Frank had insisted on. "Always be ready, Em." She pulled out antiseptic wipes, gauze pads, and medical tape. She worked with practiced efficiency. She cleaned the gash on his forehead, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Michael watched her, his gray eyes tracking her every movement. He had expected her to run when Brad threatened her. People always ran. "This will sting," she murmured. She applied the antiseptic. He hissed, but didn't pull away. She taped the gauze down securely, checking his pupils as she worked. They were responsive, which was good. "Can you breathe deeply for me?" she asked. Michael tried, but flinched. "Left side. Hurts. Probably a bruised rib. We won't wrap it, that restricts breathing. We need to get you up." She maneuvered her arm under his shoulders. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. She hauled him up. He was heavy, dead weight leaning against her, but she planted her feet and held him. They moved slowly toward the door. Just as they reached the hallway, the doors swung open again. This time, it wasn't Brad. It was Vice Principal Henderson. A tall, imposing man with a perfectly knotted tie and a face that looked like it was carved from granite. He stared at Emily, her arm around the charity case, blood on her uniform shirt. "Miss Carter," Henderson said, his voice dangerously calm. Would you like to explain why you are dragging a student through the hallway after hours, looking like you've been in a street brawl? He's hurt, sir, Emily said, shifting Michael's weight to keep him upright. Brad and his friends… Stop, Henderson cut her off, holding up a hand. I don't want to hear wild accusations against exemplary students. I see a boy who likely got into a fight he couldn't handle, and a girl who is violating school policy by being in restricted areas. He needs a hospital, Emily insisted. He has a head wound. Henderson looked at Michael with disdain. He looks like he needs a shower and a lesson in conduct. And you, Miss Carter, you have disappointed me. This institution is built on order. You are creating chaos. Helping someone isn't chaos, Emily shot back. The vice principal's eyes narrowed. Your mother's employment hangs by a thread, Emily, and your scholarship is even thinner. Leave the boy here. Security will escort him off the premises. You go find your mother and go home. If I see you near him again, you won't be coming back on Monday. Michael tried to stand on his own, pulling away from Emily to spare her. Go, he wheezed. I'll be fine. Emily looked at Henderson, then at Michael. She saw the blood seeping through the gauze she had just applied. She saw the fear Michael was trying to hide. She tightened her grip on Michael's waist. I'm taking him to the hospital, Emily said, her voice clear and final. You can expel me on Monday, but today I'm doing what's right. She walked past the vice principal, dragging Michael with her. Henderson was so shocked by the sheer audacity that he didn't physically stop them. He just watched them go, his face turning a deep, furious red. You've made a grave mistake, Miss Carter, he shouted down the hallway. Emily didn't look back. She got Michael out the side door and into the pouring rain. Her mother's old station wagon was waiting at the curb, the engine idling. Linda Carter jumped out of the car, her face pale with worry when she saw the blood. Emily! Oh my God, what happened? Open the door, Mom. We need to go to St. Jude's. Now. They bundled Michael into the back seat. Emily climbed in beside him, pressing a fresh towel against his head as the car pulled away, splashing through the deep puddles. Michael looked at her, his vision blurring. The pain was intense, but the warmth of her hand on his shoulder was grounding. Why? He whispered, his head lolling back against the seat. You lost everything. Emily looked out the window at the retreating silhouette of the school that had been her only ticket to a better life. She felt a pang of terror in her stomach, but beneath it, the solid steel of conviction. You're not trash, Michael, she said softly, and I'm not going to let them treat you like you are. Michael closed his eyes. As darkness took him, he didn't think about the pain. He thought about the girl with the blonde ponytail who had stood up to a giant for him. He reached into his pocket with a trembling hand, touching the sleek, hidden phone he had kept turned off for weeks. He didn't have the strength to pull it out, but he made a silent vow. If he survived this, Emily Carter would never have to worry about a scholarship again. But for now, the car rattled into the night, carrying a terrified maid's daughter and the secret heir to a billion-dollar empire, driving away from the only world they both knew. The drive to St. Jude's Hospital was a blur of rain-streaked windows and the rhythmic thump-thump of the station wagon's windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the storm. Inside the car, the air was thick with tension. Linda drove with both hands gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't yell. She didn't scold. That silence was worse than any shouting match. It was the silence of a woman calculating how much gas was left in the tank and how many days of food were in the pantry. In the back seat, Emily kept the pressure applied to Michael's head wound. The towel was heavy now, warm and damp. Stay awake, Michael, Emily said softly. Tell me something. Anything. Michael blinked, fighting the heaviness in his eyelids. The pain in his ribs was a dull, throbbing ache that spiked every time the car hit a pothole. I like your car, he lied, his voice weak. It smells like vanilla. It smells like cleaning supplies and old upholstery, Emily corrected him with a faint, sad smile. My mom buys the vanilla air fresheners in bulk to hide the chemical smell. She says she doesn't want to bring work home, but the smell follows her anyway. Michael turned his head slightly to look at her. In the passing streetlights, her face was a mixture of grit and exhaustion. She looked like a soldier in the trenches, just like the stories she had mentioned. "You're in trouble," Michael said. It wasn't a question. "I'm always in trouble," Emily replied. "Usually for reading in the hallway or wearing the wrong color socks. Saving a life is a better reason than most." Linda glanced in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Emily, Vice Principal Henderson called my cell phone 3 times while we were walking to the car. I didn't answer, but we both know what that message is going to say." "He can't fire you for me helping a student, Mom," Emily argued, though her voice lacked conviction. "That's illegal. It's retaliation." "Distinctive legal rights don't mean much to people like Henderson," Linda said, her voice trembling. "He'll say I left my post. He'll say you trespassed. He'll find a reason. That job was the only thing keeping the lights on." The car hit a bump, and Michael groaned. Emily winced in sympathy. "Let's worry about the lights later, Mom. Right now we just need a doctor." They pulled into the emergency bay of St. Jude's. It was a stark contrast to the private clinics Michael was used to. There were no valet attendants, no quiet waiting rooms with soft jazz. The automatic doors slid open to reveal a chaotic scene. A crying baby, an elderly man coughing violently, and a line of people looking tired and forgotten. Linda parked the car and rushed to get a wheelchair. Together, they helped Michael out of the back seat. He felt dizzy, his legs like jelly, but he leaned into Emily, trusting her completely. At the intake desk, a harried nurse with dark circles under her eyes barely looked up. "Name? Insurance?" "Michael." Emily paused. She looked at him. "Do you have your insurance card?" Michael hesitated. He had a card in his wallet, a black card that would alert his family's private physicians and security team within minutes. If he used it, his father would know he was here. His father would send the helicopter. He would be pulled out of school, locked away in the penthouse for his own safety. And he would never see Emily again. He wanted to stay. He wanted to see this through. "No insurance," Michael said, his voice raspy. "My name is Michael Miller." He used his mother's maiden name, a common enough name to avoid flags. The nurse sighed, typing it in. "Okay, Mr. Miller. Sit in the waiting area. We'll call you." "He has a head injury and has lost consciousness," Emily pressed, leaning over the counter. Her grandfather's training kicked in again. "He needs a CT scan to rule out a subdural hematoma. He is disoriented and his pupils were sluggish earlier. He can't just sit in a chair." The nurse looked up, surprised by the medical terminology coming from a teenager in a rain-soaked school uniform. She looked at Michael, really looked at him this time, seeing the blood-soaked towel and the pale sheen of his skin. "Trauma 2, the nurse said, pointing to the double doors. "Take him back. I'll get the doctor." Emily guided the wheelchair through the doors. They found an empty curtained bay. She helped him onto the narrow bed. "You know a lot of big words," Michael said, trying to smile as he lay back against the crinkly paper pillow. "Grandpa Frank made me memorize the Merck manual when I was 12, Emily said, checking his pulse again. He said, "Emily, the world is dangerous. Competence is your only shield." He sounds intense. He was. He was also the best man I ever knew. He raised me after my dad left. Emily pulled a blanket over him. "He taught me that you don't look away when things get ugly. That's when you look closer." A young resident doctor bustled in, snapping on latex gloves. He examined Michael quickly, shining a light in his eyes and palpating his ribs. 3 stitches for the head. Ribs are likely bruised, maybe a hairline fracture. "You're lucky, kid. An inch lower and you'd have lost that eye." The doctor began preparing a suture kit. "I'm going to numb the area. This will pinch." Emily stood by the head of the bed. Without thinking, she took Michael's hand. His fingers curled around hers, holding on tight. He focused on her face, ignoring the needle. So, Michael said, trying to distract himself as the doctor worked. What does Emily Carter do when she isn't saving stray dogs? She studies, Emily said. She works part-time at the diner on weekends, and she dreams of going to medical school. I want to be a trauma surgeon. I want to fix things that are broken. You're already doing it, Michael murmured. The procedure took 20 minutes. When the doctor finished, he gave them a list of concussion protocols and a prescription for painkillers. You can go home, but someone needs to wake you up every 2 hours tonight. He can't go home, Linda said from the doorway. She had been pacing the hall. He said his dad is a truck driver on a long-haul route. No one is home. Emily looked at Michael. Is that true? Michael felt a pang of guilt. His father was actually in Tokyo, closing a merger for their tech conglomerate. He wasn't a truck driver. He was Richard Sterling, a man who owned shipping fleets, not the trucks themselves. But the lie was necessary. Yeah, Michael said. It's just me. Linda rubbed her temples. She looked at the boy, beaten, alone, with no money and no advocate. Then she looked at her daughter, who was looking at her with wide, pleading eyes. We can't leave him here, Emily said. He needs monitoring. Linda sighed, a long, weary exhale that seemed to deflate her entire posture. Fine, he can sleep on the couch, but I'm calling social services in the morning if we can't reach his father. Thank you, Mom, Emily said, hugging her mother fiercely. They left the hospital an hour later. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black under the city lights. The drive to the Carter apartment was silent, but different this time. The sharp edge of panic had dulled into a heavy, somber reality. They lived in a small complex on the south side of town, the kind of place where the elevator was always broken and the neighbors knew each other's business through the thin walls. They walked up the 3 flights of stairs. The apartment was tiny but spotless. It was filled with books, stacks of them in every corner. Grandpa Frank's old armchair sat in the living room like a throne. Linda set up the couch with fresh sheets. Here, she said, handing Michael a pair of oversized sweatpants that had belonged to Emily's grandfather. These will be huge, but they're clean. The bathroom is down the hall. While Michael changed, Emily went into the kitchen to make tea. Linda sat at the small dinette table, her phone in her hand. She stared at the screen. Mom? Emily placed a mug of chamomile tea in front of her. Did he call again? Linda nodded slowly. She didn't look up. He sent a text. Do not report tomorrow. Your final check will be mailed. Your daughter is barred from campus pending an expulsion hearing. The room went dead silent. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. Emily felt the floor drop out from under her. Expulsion? For what? Helping someone? For insubordination. For endangering a student. He can make up whatever he wants, Em. He's the vice principal. We're nobody. Linda's voice cracked. I have $80 in the checking account. Rent is due on Tuesday. Emily sank into the chair opposite her mother. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a cold, hollow dread. She had done the right thing. She knew she had. But the cost was catastrophic. She had destroyed their fragile stability. I'll pick up extra shifts at the diner, Emily said quickly. I can work nights. We can fight the expulsion. I'll go to the school board. The school board is made up of Henderson's golf buddies, Linda said, wiping a tear from her cheek. We lost, Emily. We tried to play their game, and we lost. Michael stood in the hallway, listening. He wore the old gray sweatpants and his blood-stained shirt. He heard the despair in Linda's voice. He heard the ruin he had caused. He looked at the apartment. It was humble, almost poor, but it was warm. It was a home. He saw the photos on the wall. Emily and her mom laughing, an old man in a uniform saluting. There was love here. Real, messy, sacrificial love. His own home was a cold museum of glass and steel, staffed by people paid to care. He retreated quietly into the bathroom and locked the door. He sat on the edge of the tub and pulled out his phone again. It had 4% battery left. He powered it on. Dozens of notifications flooded the screen. Missed calls from father, security chief, headmaster. He ignored them all. He opened his banking app. The balance displayed was a string of numbers that could buy this entire apartment complex 10 times over. He couldn't transfer money to them directly. It would raise too many questions. He had to be smarter. He had to fix this without breaking his cover, because for the first time in his life, he had a friend who liked him for him, not for the balance on this screen. He typed a text message to a number saved simply as Arthur, his father's personal fixer and the one man Michael trusted. Message: I am safe. Do not track this phone. I need you to handle a situation at Oak Creek Academy immediately. Vice Principal Henderson fired a staff member, Linda Carter, and expelled her daughter, Emily. This is a mistake. Fix it. Anonymous donor, scholarship, grant. I don't care how you do it. Reinstate them with a raise and a full apology. Do not reveal it came from me. If you do, I disappear for good. I mean it, Arthur. He hit send. He waited 3 seconds. The reply came back. Arthur. Understood, Michael. Are you injured? Your father is ready to tear the city apart. Michael. I'm fine. Just handle Henderson. And Arthur.